go. So on behalf of Professional and Career Development Services and the Office of Community Engaged Learning, formally welcome. This is our first in our series of Careers for Social Change panels. We'll be doing one this fall and one in the spring. We have done this series now for 3 years, and if you go back to drake.edu/career and take a look at the events, you will find links to the video recordings of our previous panels and some very dynamic and interesting speakers we've highlighted over the last couple of years. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm going to serve this evening as your moderator. Pathways for Civic Action and Social Change is one framework that we use here at Drake to help us understand the various paths for getting involved in service. Tonight, we have the pleasure of being joined by 3 professionals in the community who have experience, and their professional life has taken them down several different of these paths. So towards the end of the session tonight, we will share a little bit more about the Pathways model. But I want to get right to it so that we can hear from our speakers this evening. So we are joined by Nancy Muratosi, who is the Executive Director and founder of Pi 515. So she will tell you a little bit more in a moment about her work with that. Eric Idahan, who is the, and I've lost my title slide, Amanda. Eric, please forgive me, I forget the name of your new company.
Sorry, it's President and CEO of OPX International LLC. Sorry about that, Renee.
That's okay. So you'll hear from Eric and various roles too that he has held over the last couple of years. And then finally, Courtney Kirkpatrick with Home Inc., who will also share her new title because it has changed recently. So not the best of introductions on my part. So before we get started and hearing from our panelists, I just want to remind everyone a few housekeeping tips. Of course, we've all learned now, hopefully over the last couple of years, that these virtual meetings mean there may be, environmental things going on in the background. So if everyone could mute while you are not talking, that would be helpful. It looks like we've already spotlighted our panelists this evening, but if you do have a comment or a question, please feel free to either raise your hand with that function or put a question in the chat box. That'll be monitored by Amanda, and we'll be sure to ask the question on your behalf. When you are asking a question, you feel free to unmute yourself and show your video as well after you've been called on, if you are comfortable with that. So to get us started this evening, let's go Nancy, Courtney, Eric. Please just give us a quick introduction of who you are and what is filling your time and your bucket these days. Nancy, we'll hear from you first.
Oh my God, you put me on the spotlight, Renee. Hey guys, hey Jordan. It's great to see young people here. So I just came from Grinnell right now, so it's always an honor when I can meet young people. So I am Nancy, the founder of Pi 515. It's called Pursuit of Innovation. We started this organization 8 years ago. We actually teach tech skills to young people. We love engaging young people. So what fills my bucket is mentorship. I love spending time with young people and helping them, just listening to them and helping them navigate their pathway.
I'm Courtney Kirkpatrick, Director of Advancement and Administration here at Home Inc. We are Des Moines' oldest affordable housing nonprofit. I actually used to work at Drake University in the development office, so I used to get to work with Amanda and Renee. What fills my bucket these days is travel and community engagement. I'm on the board for a couple of other nonprofits in the area, and I'm also involved with the Greater Des Moines Leadership Institute, now rebranded as Lead DSM. So leadership is a big passion of mine.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Eric Idahan. Currently, I have my company OPX International that I just started. It's been a pleasure working for yourself. So before that, I used to work for Wells Fargo as community relations director. I also, in the past, worked as diversity and equity manager for Wells Fargo Financial way back. What fills my bucket is trying to change lives and build hope for kids who do not have parents. I like to serve the orphans. And so that way I'll be able to speak for them when they cannot speak, be able to help them see where they cannot see, and I'll be able to help them walk when they are not able to walk. So that is what I do when I'm not busy.
Fantastic. Thank you. So each of you have been selected to serve on tonight's panel, given your personal but also your professional background as it relates to social change. So our model that we use here talks about being able to use community-based research, maybe our time through volunteering, maybe it's advocacy and influencing legislation, maybe it's organizing others around a common cause to advocate for a policy change. Maybe it's philanthropy and it's raising dollars or goods for a cause. And then lastly, our sixth path is we're lifting up what it means to use business as a force for good. And so corporate social responsibility efforts as well as social entrepreneurship. You were selected because you fit in multiple buckets, in multiple paths based on your personal and your professional endeavors. So could you give our audience tonight a highlight of how you see your work intersecting maybe with those various paths? In other words, what is it that you do personally and professionally? I guess let's start with the professional question. Given this is a panel about careers for social change, how does your career enact or affect change? And what are you working to change? Let's go backwards. Start with Eric.
In my current role, I as a consultant. So in the area of psychology, IO psychology, which is industrial and organizational psychology. That is what we now refer to as transformational HR. The role of my company is to help create an opportunity for organizations to reimagine their approach to how they engage their employees, how they are well taken care of, and the expectations when it comes to productivity. Most organizations are always looking at bottom line. And what I do is to go in there and help address issues of needs to see where the gaps are in their company. And when I do that assessment, I use all kinds of methods, but most importantly, I always diagnose what the problem is by listening to where they are at currently and where they want to be. And I create a kind of an address for their GPS for them. And when they go put my address in their GPS and they cruise and they get to a detour, we recalculate again and put a new address that will get them to their destination. What I mean by that analogy is I'm like a physician. Listen to your problems, ask questions, come up with solutions, and help them to meet their needs. Now, making the workplace a better place is not just DEI, it's more of the mental health of the individual. Social change is also involved in that because we help create opportunity for the left behind. It could be a glass ceiling issue where certain groups are marginalized and they cannot climb the corporate ladder to become whether CEO or whatever that company criteria are. So in that role, in my job, right, in my profession right now, in my business, that is what I do. But in the past, I used corporate social responsibility to kind of walk way into ethical intelligence for organizations to know that it is expected for them to give back. And it starts with everyone who is an employee.
Eric, since I've got you, I'm gonna put you on the spot because you also have founded a nonprofit. Could you talk about that work a little bit?
Yes. So I like the word leaders, but when you say someone is a servant leader, that is what gets me motivated and excited. So to serve, to be a leader, you have to serve first. I grew up in Africa. I understand what it is to have very few resources. So my wife and I decided to start an orphanage in 2005 called Cornerstone of Hope Orphanage. My child home, I donated it, and we use it to take care of kids who do not have parents. And today we're proud to say we've helped 147 children to find happy homes. What we do is to build hope for them, share love, and change their lives so that they can become cornerstone. So the rejected soul becoming cornerstone is what we do. And so that they too can go back and help other kids who have needs, so that they too can become cornerstone. 19 of our kids are in the United States. They were adopted and brought to the United States. 2 of the 19 are in Iowa. One of them is our daughter. So it is humbling to serve, because there is fulfillment when you give back, and you're actually blessed when you give, you give more. And I'll talk about that later. When you empty your cup, you refresh your cup, is actually very fulfilling and is rewarding.
Thank you very much. Courtney.
Yeah, so professionally by trade, I'm a fundraiser. So philanthropy kind of comes top of mind. But as an organization, Home Inc. provides a variety of resources, and I get to kind of be the networker that connects us with partnerships with other nonprofit organizations or corporations who are, doing their piece for corporate social responsibility, meeting to come up with programs that fill the need of the company and organization and what they're trying to do. And then we can kind of be flexible and create a program on our end that is then serving the community to meet those needs. So our mission is to meet folks where they're at on their housing journey, whether that's homelessness to home ownership and rental housing in between. We just really want to provide a resource to the community that helps empower families to create housing stability, because we know that without housing, there causes disruption in education and healthcare and food insecurities and all of the above. So we do a variety of things to meet those needs here at Home Inc.
Thank you. Nancy, what about you?
So I think the work that we do, or I do, actually fits basically all those buckets. I am who you call women who create. I am a rebel. I own up to that. I believe that all the best innovation has been created through social entrepreneurship. And I'll give an example. So, do you guys know that the technology that you use to pay-as-you-go technology, that was actually invented in Africa, right? Venmo, Cash App, Africa was already transacting money before that, and that was created because of social enterprise. So I believe in that. I also believe that kids cannot be who they don't see. I believe in closing the income gap. I believe in putting kids in places that they feel doesn't belong to them. When I think every space belongs to young people. So we have created an amazing program that actually allows young people to be in spaces. In fact, tonight I am with you. We've hired 4 Drake interns. We pay them $20 an hour. They're both at my classes at both Principal Financial, as well as, where's the other one? At John Deere. And we're going to be expanding that. And what they're doing is they're working with the companies to actually provide tech mentorship for students who are younger than them. Then we end up hiring our high school students, put them through a leadership program, and guess what we do? We hire them to teach in the middle school. That's what I believe, and I believe change cannot happen if we don't bring all the stakeholders together. So I am an advocate, as you could tell. I think a lot of people, Renee, when we first met, you never knew this was gonna turn into this huge advocacy thing. but it has turned into a very beautiful thing. As of right now, last school year, we sent kids to almost all Ivy Leagues. We have a student at Duke, we have a student at Yale, Princeton, Georgia Tech, Georgetown. And also what I want to brag about is we have almost 150 young people in the tech pipeline, as well as 7 in the medical pipeline. I am a woman, I am a Black woman. I'm very proud. There are those who said I didn't belong in that space. There are those who said I had an accent, but I proved them wrong because the work we have done will not be duplicated easily. In fact, we got recognized by Goldman Sachs as one of the most impactful 50 Black-led female organization in the States, and that is amazing. So I believe in advocacy. How you choose to do it matters. Yeah.
Congratulations on that. Thank you. So I have additional questions and curiosities myself, but I want to open it up before I jump in. Is there anyone that's with us this evening that has a question for our panelists and wants to hear more? You can either put it in the chat or raise your hand and we'll call on you. Don't be shy. Prime opportunity. Okay, well, be thinking about questions and please feel free to add those to the chat. My next question has to do with then your career path. How did you get to where you're at? Let's see, we'll go Courtney first this time.
Okay. Yeah, I stumbled into mine. I was at the University of Iowa, psychology major, was very poor and was looking for a job. And the highest paying job on campus was working at the Alumni Association, calling alumni and asking for money. At this point in my life, I was terrified to even call the doctor's office to set up a doctor's appointment. So the fact that I made it through that job with persistence and some training and some guidance from other students, I became a fundraiser. It wasn't something that I even knew was an option. I didn't know that that was a career path that you could take. But as I did that for my sophomore, junior, and senior year. And when it was time to graduate, I knew that I needed to find a job. And with a psychology degree, I knew that I needed to go and get more education to actually put that to good use. And I wasn't quite ready to take out the enormous amount of debt that required. And so I just continued working with the same company that I worked with. It was a fundraising management company. I told them I wanted to move far away, and they put me in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And so just from there, after I was in Cedar Rapids, is when I actually landed at Drake University. Worked there for a couple of years for that same company, and then Drake hired me on. And working for Drake really opened up a lot of doors because I was able to get my master's degree while working at Drake and take advantage of that. And that actually was a decision I had to either make. I ended up getting my master's in public administration, but I thought really hard about doing mental health counseling. And so that would have put me in a much different position than I'm in right now. But I figured if I took the public administration route, I could still continue to be a fundraiser and have an impact on the community, but maybe I wouldn't have to take on that sort of secondhand trauma that being a mental health counselor causes. And so that was really the deciding factor for me. So I got my master's, and once I graduated, working at Drake was incredible, and working with students was so great. But I knew that I wanted to have more of a direct impact on the most vulnerable population in the community. So that's when I started looking at local organizations who got to work. I was looking heavily in affordable housing, food insecurity, something that really the front lines of helping our most vulnerable population. And so that's what led me to Home Inc. My position was brand new. They'd never had a fundraiser or anyone doing any marketing prior to me. And so I've been here for 4 years. So we've kind of I'd like to think that we've become more well-known in the community. And I would say that a lot of the groundwork and networking I've done the first few years have really started to pay off in terms of dollars. People are starting to understand who we are and the role that we play in the community. So it's really just the beginning for me and Home Inc., but it's very exciting.
Thank you, Courtney. Two pieces of nuggets I heard. One was you have to know yourself, right? And know who you are and what you need and where you're at. That played a big factor in your decisions around when and where to go to school, as well as then when and where to maybe look for a career shift or employer shift. So thank you for sharing that. Eric, how about you? What has been your career path?
Well, my journey wasn't straight at all. So I'll take you back to when I moved to the United States. Let's leave the other ones out because of time. So when I moved to the United States in 2000, that's 22 years ago, I already have my bachelor's degree in construction. I have 3 majors, so I was ready for the American dream. But I didn't get a job. I ended up in the kitchen in the grocery store called Doll's Food as a dishwasher. And I do help serve lunch during lunch hour to customers. I mean, that is how I met one of the ladies that worked for Wells Fargo, who was my best customer. She hired me as a bank teller in 2001. Well, I didn't like the job in the kitchen, but I had to do 2 jobs, so I kept that job. And while at Wells Fargo, I discovered that my travels around the world gave me some language abilities, and I used those resources to help serve our customers. So I spoke more of language, like I spoke Spanish and Russian. And in addition to English, that gave me opportunity to serve a wider range of clients. And I moved around the ladder. Well, I knew, I don't know about Nancy, but I know I speak English with accent. So I decided to work on myself because it was very difficult to move up. It was challenging to get promotion. And I was also looking at what is it that I need to do better. So I had to put 210% of my best to get noticed. While I was doing that, I was African immigrant with a green card. I wasn't African American. So I know when I become US citizen, I'll be called African American. So I started to volunteer in the African American space, going to events like I'll Make Me a World, during the Juneteenth event. I was getting involved with team member network group within Wells Fargo to get to know the DNA and some of the things I really didn't know because I did not grow up here. That kind of gave me opportunity to volunteer and to put my face out there. And you cannot believe it, just by giving off your time, you can actually get a job through that. Courtney talked about working as a psychologist, answering phones and making calls, trying to raise funds. I mean, that's what she's kind of pathway. In my case, volunteering out there, I got to know the community better because I wasn't born in Des Moines, Iowa. I just moved here from Europe then. Now I got to know the community. I know parts of the banking world. And when I rose the rank to become assistant branch manager in 2004, they were looking for someone who knows the bank products and services. Wells Fargo was looking for the same person who will be able to move into the community and be able to carry out conversations without being afraid, and who is comfortable in his or her skin to do what is called community relations. I was like, sign me up. And that's how I got that job in 2004. In 2004, I had the job. I did it well, but guess what? I needed more. So I went back to school. I got my MBA through Phoenix. And then I said, well, I know how to manage business now just by going to school, but I have to put it in practice. I never got the job of that senior leadership. I was like, what's going on here? So I found out that there was something wrong with human beings in the workplace called psychology of the workplace. And I heard about IO. And I said, well, I got to look at it and understand what it really means. So I did my master's in IO through Walden University. It was what got me into DEI. My concentration was organizational diversity and social change. I want to fix that thing that I experienced. Mine was a lived experience. It's a phenomenological approach that I want to take to help anyone that is left behind. And I said, you know what? I need to clean up my accent a little bit by adding another degree. I went back for my postgrad. So I'm working on my final defense. Hopefully by December, I will add a DRO to my name, but it's also in IO. So the pathway to where I'm at today wasn't straight, like I said. By volunteering, I got myself into employee community relations, and I did it so well. I think I know Courtney. We used to work with your organization too, right? And I know Nancy, of course, we go way back. And Renee, we go way back. So you will find out that sometimes when you volunteer, you give of yourself. I tell people, you don't get promoted because you did your job well. No, you're paid to do your job. You get promoted when you do above and beyond things. And one of the one I know how to do is I don't know how to say no. I just go for it. I learn from it. Now I'm trying to learn how to say no because the plate is full. So I'll stop right there in case anyone have questions, but I could go on, but it's not something that was just a clear cut. But my approach to where I'm at today was by the divine design.
Thank you, Eric. And once again, so many great nuggets in what you shared as well. And love that the connection between your volunteer engagement and skill building. So here at Drake, we have what's called the True Blue skills, which have been created based off research and what we know that employers are seeking. And we also know that community engagement experiences like volunteering are often a #1 way to build those skills. And so it's part of the reason why our office and Professional and Career Development Services collaborate on an event like this, because they go hand in hand. So thank you for pointing that out and echoing that. Nancy, what has been your career path? And students, remember to we do have one question in the chat that we'll get to after we hear from Nancy. And so if you have things you want to ask either Courtney or Eric, please put it in the chat so we don't lose it. Nancy, what's been your career path?
Mine was very unconventional path. I am those that you call a tech dropout, but kids, please don't drop out of college because the path is just harder. And I echo everybody about volunteerism, right? So I went to school for technology and I dropped out, and I'll explain a little bit later why I'm back into tech, right? And I started serving. I met a refugee woman. It was one cold winter, one of those January very cold winters. She was a single mother of 2. When she came, she had an apartment by Drake. And since I speak multiple languages, I was actually asked to help her with the doctors to speak Swahili, right? And the office was in Pleasant Hill. The doctor's office was in Pleasant Hill. That's such a distance, if you know, between Drake and Pleasant Hill, first of all. And I get there and there's this woman and they have no jackets, absolutely no jackets. And then Eric knows I was a realtor. I was very broke realtor. I was a single mother doing realtor work, which you guys, it's not easy. And so I asked the caseworker if I could take them home. And when in the process of taking them home, I stopped by Walmart and I used my money to buy those flea jackets just to keep the kids warm. And then on our way to her house, we stopped by one of those mission places to see if they had jackets. They didn't. So what happened that day was I go home and one of my friend calls me and she's like, we didn't see you at work today. And I told her about this lady. And she says, oh, my friend, her name was Dee. So she says her friend Tracy has everything, like everything I needed that I've been spending the whole day searching for in boxes. And she delivered those things that night. And that's really where my work started, working with refugees. And it's in helping this woman that I realized how refugees were being recycled into poverty. And there were no options of showing successes, especially to their young kids. So most of the parents were working at the meat plant, like this amazing woman. I helped her get a job at the meat plant. I actually drove there 5 times to beg for a job. I feel guilty sometimes for doing it, but there was no other job she could get because she couldn't speak English. Nobody had taught her how to assimilate in this country. And she was also being kicked out of the apartment, because when you come here as a refugee, you only have maybe 2-3 months, right? To have a space, and you have to start paying. So I continued helping a lot of families, but one thing I didn't know was this: I was helping them get jobs at meat plants, but kids were being left behind. That same woman that I was helping at the beginning, her daughter was really driving her crazy. And I remember seeing that, and I felt guilt. I was so excited that I'd helped them get a job. They were living at a low-income community. I was like, they have housing, they have everything, right? But the kids had nothing. And that's how I got back to say, I want to start an after-school program. So here I was, boys had soccer, girls had nothing, so I started a dance class. So basically how I got back into tech is through a dance class with 4 girls that ended up with 22, I call them very opinionated girls. And I knew that we had created such a bonding. What I needed to do was transition that back into tech. I'm just gonna tell you 1 minute of something I did. I was trying to also do a magazine on the side that highlights Africa in the correct narrative, because what you see on TV sometimes is not Africa, you guys. And I was interviewing one of my very good friends. Her name is Juliana Rotich. She's highly recognized in the world for her contribution to technology. We grew up together. She kind of dropped out of tech. And I was like, how did you get back into tech? And when we were discussing it, and she made it sound so easy. She was talking about how they use Google Map to create a crowd mapping platform. I was like, man, I'm gonna go back into tech. So I decided to go back into technology because I wanted to teach kids in a way that I wasn't taught when I was in tech school. Most of the time I was the only female in class. I felt so out of place. I always thought I was going to do customer service and data entry. So if you follow the work that we do, we're very, very intentional with the curriculum. We build curriculum. I started something called the Girls Entrepreneurship Summit. 5 weeks, we teach young girls in high school how to pitch, and courtesy of John Papa John, I give them money. We give them cash money. We thank God for that opportunity. So my path was very unconventional. I know it's a long story, but at least it tells you short from there to there. It's funny how you go back. And now I'm telling kids, don't quit school.
Yeah, do as I say, not as I did. Any other questions? I see one in the chat, but is there any additional questions? Yes, Bree.
Hello. So a question that I kind of came up with as you guys were speaking was sometimes like you're kind of unsure of your career path and what you want to do, but how do you still continue to make progress and move towards kind of like a goal you don't really have yet, I guess, if that makes sense.
And whoever feels moved or called to answer that can speak.
I can answer that. Bree, what I think the best thing to do is what I try to tell other young people is try to come up with an elimination process. And the way you could do that is trying to do as many things as you can. Unfortunately, you're in, well, it's not unfortunately, you're way younger than me, right? You still have an opportunity to try as many things as you can. Volunteerism is a great thing to do. So just try different things. And I know people are gonna say, oh my God, you're overdoing things, but by doing, you're able to tell exactly what you hate and what you don't like. I also do say, map things out. In my office, I have stickies. I know Jordan has been there, so he sees. I put stickies in the wall because it's okay to tell yourself, I don't get this. I really hate this about that, right? So eliminating things you don't like, and then that actually helps you create a clear path. I do a lot of mind mapping, so I would tell you to try that as well. But also find yourself good mentors.
One thing that I'll add to what Nancy said is what's worked for me is just trying to know myself and knowing when I'm not being challenged. That was really, I mean, working at Drake is an incredible institution. It's a great job. I had lots of friends. The work I was doing was great, but I wasn't being challenged. I wasn't filling my bucket like it used to. I kind of had hit a point that that position wasn't serving me and I wasn't putting my best foot forward. So you have to kind of know yourself and the effort that you're willing to put in. And maybe you're starting to not put in the best effort. And that's really what made me decide that I needed to move on and move into a position that filled my bucket and I was able to have more of an impact directly.
For me, I will tell you, it is about passion. So look for something that you're passionate about, and don't worry when don't be too carried away with wanting to get to the destination quickly. Life is a journey. You're young, try it. You will know if it's your passion because you derive fulfillment from doing it. Love what you do what you love. That's the best sweet spot you will ever have in life. How cool it is for you to do what you love and get paid for it. So know your passion, know where your strengths are. Don't copy other people. Don't look at someone else. Look internally. Like Courtney said, you know yourself. You know what that dream is. I tell you, I wanted to be a pilot. It didn't work out. And I want to be a medical doctor, but I ended up in a different other part of doctor that doesn't use stethoscope in a different way now. So, but I enjoy it because it's my passion. My passion is serving others, to serve, whether it's humanity or otherwise, changing lives, bringing about social change. Everything is about serving. So I would say, look at that work that you're passionate about, and then continue to work towards it as a career.
Thank you. Bree, one thing I'll point out too, so no one's career path was linear. And what you all have in common shared is that you took opportunities as opportunities presented. And so maybe let that be part of some of the relief, is that you don't have to have it all figured out. But the key piece that I heard among everyone is that they had a why. Eric calls it passion, I call it purpose. And another way to look at that is called a North Star, right? What's the thing that's guiding you? The way that looks in your work, your volunteer work, or that kind of thing can look in a lot of different ways. But is the goal, is the person passion or the purpose, something you've identified for yourself? And if not, maybe that's where you need to spend a little bit of time. Related to this is the question that's in the chat, which is from Larry, who asks, what made you decide to include social change in your career? So anyone want to take that one?
I didn't hear the last part of that question, sorry.
What made you decide to include social change in your career?
I'll start that because for me, this is my fourth country that I've lived in. And I grew up in Africa, lived in 2 different countries in Europe before I moved to the United States. I saw a gap in love that comes with a relationship between us as neighbors, as friends, as colleagues, or even as brothers and sisters. And what brings about this gap is my choice might not be yours, but how can we make this world a better place? So I saw my lived experience of being left behind. Yeah, I'll tell you one example. Someone met me in Des Moines and told me that, he said, where are you from? I said, I'm from Nigeria. Oh, you speak good English. Do you know you can better your English? I said, yeah. He said, yeah, there's a place called LSI. They teach English as a second language. Just go there, they will brush it up for you. I said, okay, thank you. This time she took me, I have my second master's already. So I sat down and asked myself the question, why? Why this? Why do we sometimes assume? That woman, I had nothing against her. She was just trying to help me, right? But I want to be able to be the person that creates opportunity for people like her to understand that speak with accent, or having accent doesn't make someone a dummy, or doesn't make someone uneducated. I speak with accent because of a reason, because English is not my first language. It's not even my second, it's my fourth language. So that understanding is what I want to bring about that will help people to live together in harmony and love. That is why it is a kind of social change when you put it DEI. I don't always put diversity in everything I do because it kind of pushes people away. When you say diversity, they say, here we go again. No, I just say, you know what? Love. It's what I call love now. So I don't know if I answer your question, but I can go deeper if you want and if you have time.
I think for me, so growing up, I was raised by my great aunt and uncle because my father was in and out of prison, my mom was an addict. And so I was able to see two sides, you know, the low income, my mom bouncing around, while also living with my aunt and uncle. I had a lot of privilege. So I think just growing up, I was provided with a lot. And so I wanted to give back and help people hopefully not find themselves in situations like my parents. So I think mine's very personal.
So for me, I think mine keeps evolving every time that I'm doing the work. Right now, I do realize that to whom much is given, much is expected. So I feel very fortunate. I realize I am a very privileged African. The fact that I could speak English, there's so many Africans who've come to this country who could not speak English. And so another thing is I have come to realize what really keep us poor, especially we majority, low, people of color, is because we've been recycled in so many predatory systems. And if there's anything that I want to leave behind is an organization that made sure that by the time a student left my hand and went to college, they were negotiating a six-figure income. And that is how we close the wealth gap. That is how we close the diversity gap. That is so many gaps. So I think I would say allow yourself to grow, but also allow your mission to evolve, because otherwise we become stagnant and we stop creating social change.
Thank you. Powerful. Jordan, I see you have your hand up.
Yes. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Fantastic. I just had a quick question. I guess, have you guys in your organization like run into significant hurdles in social change, either like within the Des Moines, like interacting with the Des Moines area, or just like in other companies or things of that nature, or working with other organizations? And if so, how has your company or your organization kind of overcome those hurdles?
I can go first on this one. Money is always the biggest hurdle, I think, for most nonprofits. So Homeinc specifically, we've gotten very creative with our model and had to adjust to kind of, for many years we relied heavily on government funding, but as government funding goes down, the cost of building houses and everything goes up, and wages and all of that. So we've had to get really creative. So hiring me was kind of the first step 4 years ago, hiring someone that's actually charged with fundraising. And then recently we've looked at our model and how we build houses. For a long time, we used our own money to build new construction. And then once the house was sold, we would get paid and get our money back, and we could filter that. But instead now we're looking for outside partnerships, and we've secured a line of credit at $1 million, interest-free, to be able to build more houses and have more projects going at once instead of relying on our own funding. Also, another issue with affordable housing in Des Moines is there's not a lot of green space. There's not a lot of space to build new houses. So how can we get creative and create smaller density units and utilize current houses that already exist? So we're currently building an accessory dwelling unit project to be kind of as a demonstration, which an accessory dwelling unit is, think tiny house. It's a livable space that can be connected to the house, a garage. It can be a tiny space in the backyard to, it can also act as a revenue source. You can rent it out or use it as an Airbnb. And so we're just having to take a look at how we've done things and how do we radically do things differently. And it's a challenge, but I think that we're hopefully going to find success in utilizing partnerships, and other companies, banks and credit unions have to partner with organizations for CRA credits. And so how do we utilize and leverage those relationships? So leveraging other people's dollars instead of having to rely on and coming up with the money on our own is really how we're doing it.
I'll go next, Nancy, if that's okay. For us, this is a new company. Competition is one of the hurdles we're trying to kind of tackle, because as a new company in the DEI space, you meet people. There's so many folks out there that call themselves diversity consultant. The way we market ourselves is that we are diversity specialists, DEI specialists. We are kind of a physician. I leveraged my education to kind of pitch our specialty and our competitive advantage over others, because when you study IO, human being in the workplace, the psychology that goes with that, and then on top of that, concentration on organizational diversity and social change, that is a true diversity consultant. Now, that is how people are beginning to know us. However, there's another hurdle that came by design, being in Des Moines. I know you mentioned Des Moines. I have branded myself so well as community relations director or specialist for 17 years. And I've worked with a lot of organizations that people know me as Eric of that company. And when I now tell them I do DEI, they're like, wow, so what about this? You were good at this. I'm like, no, that was my other life. This is a new world now. So trying to marry those two together, but still have a new identity is a hurdle for us. But we're doing very well because we're focusing on not just Des Moines, we're looking at international and as well as national, because IO is new. People don't know the meaning of organizational and industrial and organizational psychology. Most people don't know it. So when I say HR reimagined or redefined, it is a better way to say it so that HR folks will not get mad at me. But what it is that we are the people that make sure HR will do their job well, so that everyone will be winners. It's not like they're not doing their job well, but we're going to ease their job when we enhance their job. So that is how we try to brand ourselves. Courtney, if you find finance, let me know where you find the money. We need money too.
I think I'm going to go quickly. Jordan, great question. And I think in Iowa, we tend to be all Iowa nice, but sometimes we forget to be real. So Courtney is right. Iowa is very risk. They don't like risks. So raising money for something that doesn't look comfortable or it's different becomes a little bit harder. So me being a Black founder, I'm in technology, right? We have a startup nonprofit. So it's slightly, I want to think it's a little bit different because we innovate in the nonprofit, right? So unfortunately, when it comes to risks and how people think about perceived risks, my accent is a risk, my race is a risk, my gender is a risk. I'm in a very risky field that does still till today does not even have 27% women in it. And especially in Iowa, that number I'm telling you is minimal. So I know that when I'm in places, I have to be the face of so many young girls, regardless of how they look and how they come. Because if I don't stick with this, I don't know how many others come behind me. So I'm very intentional with that. And I know that I go ahead and allowing others to come with me. I would tell you racism, racial trauma and bias is real. I've had cases whereby my grant, we apply for grants and then it's given to somebody else and they're told, go duplicate that, right? And usually there's some people who will go without a plan, without an idea, and they'll be given the funds. And it used to hurt me. And there are things that really hurt me, especially in 2018, 2019. I went through what I am calling it a massive racial trauma. And it took me a while to call it that. And now I talk about it. And it starts with little things, you know, like I said, sometimes nice is not real, right? It's the little things. I would go to meetings and present pitches. I'm going to tell you this. Somebody wanted to give me $200,000 a couple of years back, and they used a gatekeeper or somebody in between. It's somebody anonymous. And every time I'd go to that meeting, this group of women, and you know, I was thinking women, we're all allies. Are we supposed to be allies? They would roll their eyes. But when my assistant spoke, it was like, okay. And my assistant doesn't know anything about technology, right? So it's experiencing things like that and more. I to be honest, I think it's after George Floyd when people started talking about race and bias that I was like, oh, I'm not the only one, right? So there's a lot to overcome, but I will tell you this, especially since you guys are young. How we've done things in the past sometimes have been wrong. Create your own table, focus, consistency, and the right people will come along. I didn't know when I was going through my racial trauma, the Goldman Sachs was looking at me, that I have another anonymous donor was looking at me who wrote me a $300,000 check. I didn't know that John Papa John would even know that I'm so tired. He'd call me in his office and say, you need to go sleep, you're tired. How did he even know, right? So if you do the things that are right, like I say, focus, consistency, your team will come along. So don't listen to those who want to limit your opportunity of greatness. Yeah.
Not seeing any other hands or questions in the chat. We only have about 5 minutes left. Panelists, is there anything that you have not shared that you think would be relevant to students and those who are listening to the recording?
Yes, I just want to tell them to, one of the ways I draw my path is I don't settle for less, and I put in a lot of energy. So when you're going to aim high, please don't shoot at the sky. Don't shoot at the top of the mountain, please. Shoot and aim at the sky and aim at the stars in the sky so that when you miss, you land at least on top of one mountain. Then you aim again after that. So set 2 years goals, minimum, maximum 5 years. Don't let it be too long, and always recalculate, like GPS address. Always recalculate. That's life.
I think the one thing that I'll leave the group with is, especially, you know, as young alumni, as you go out into the workforce, I think that because of your age, you may feel like you don't deserve a seat at the table. And I don't think that's just not the case. I wish someone would have told me that when I was young, that if you have something to say, speak up. It's all, we learn best from each other, and you all deserve a seat at the table. So I hope you all have the confidence to speak up.
So number one, please follow me on LinkedIn, Twitter. Anybody who needs to come see me at the office, please do. The one thing I'll tell you, you are at the right prime of change. As bad as COVID was, what it has done is highlighted gaps and so many things that need to be changed in this world to be made better. So maybe it's not NFTs, okay? Maybe it's not Web3, who knows? You are at the prime moment in history because we know by 2030, everything is gonna be digital. So spend time and ask yourself, what can I build? And be brave about it, because I do think the world needs your innovation now. Don't listen to us adults. Some of us don't, we're very slow at thought, but you guys are much faster. You adapt faster. Build. If any advice I could tell you, you're on the right, this is the moment. Regardless of race, gender, income, do it now. And don't give up on yourselves. We believe in you. Again, focus, consistency. Thank you.
Thank you. And please help me virtually thank our panelists using the little hand clapping. We do these panels, like I said, a couple of times a year, and each time I just walk away feeling inspired and hopeful for the work that's being done, and hopefully the work that will continue to be done. For those who are on the call, additional resources, I encourage you to check out our website, drake.edu/CEL, and Amanda can put the direct link. But there's actually an assessment tool that goes along with the pathways. So if you're looking to kind of explore where maybe you could spend some time in community engagement, we've got a tool, and then encourage you to come meet with one of our community engagement peers for a debrief and reflection, and we will help you get connected, whether it be organizations like those that have been featured this evening or others in the community. Of course, your professional and career development services staff like Annette Watson, Crystal Stanley are also available for appointments through Handshake, to help you through resume or cover letter preparation or interviewing, or thinking through different assessments and taking them to figure out kind of where you think your passions can fill some of those needs in this world professionally. And then Amanda and myself also are available as well for these kinds of conversations. So panelists, once again, thank you so much for your time this evening, taking an hour out to share your story and inspiration and the raw and realness to it as well. I really appreciate that. So we will drop your contact information in a follow-up to those who are on this call, but if not, I can probably find everyone on LinkedIn or Google and find their email, and I'm sure they would be happy to follow up with you as well. So thank you very much, and yeah, we'll talk with you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.